I do think you're going to see a lot of volatility over the years. This is going to be a great play over the next 5 years.
They might be speculative now, but the sky is the limit for these three space stocks.
They're up about 300% in 1 year. And it's because they're finally hitting this sort of real-time ability to be space-based intelligence.
Keith Kaplan with TradeSmith is back to share another 3 stock tickers you might not have heard of, but have a lot of potential ahead.
They actually IPO'd earlier this year and are up 160% since they IPO'd. It's a $10 billion company and they already have contracts for Department of Defense.
How soon could these space stocks take off? Let's dive in. We are so excited to continue our Vegas series today with Keith Kaplan from TradeSmith. Keith, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Bridget. It's great to be back with you.
Now, we've had you on the show a few times in the last couple of months talking about robotics, and now we're talking about something slightly different, and that's aerospace. What are we seeing in this sector right now?
Okay, so last time we were together, we talked about Rocket Lab, which is a great space company who is 3D printing engines and doing all sorts of things to get rockets in space, satellites in space, and so forth. So when it comes to space, it's sort of new to a lot of people, but the government has had these needs for innovation for many years, and they can't do it themselves. There's too much red tape and bureaucracy. So you have the government needs, you have people want to do space tourism, believe it or not. There's asteroid mining. So there's needs to look at asteroids in space and figure out what elements they're made of and what they're doing and their trajectory. There's, believe it or not, this idea of cellular phone service, which I have a great company to tell you about today when it comes to that space, getting 5G around the world without interruptions. You have people like Elon who want to colonize Mars for humanity's purpose, and help humanity live on in Mars. The good news is it creates a lot of economic jobs, so there's a lot of growth for the economy and jobs. And certainly there's a whole lot of disaster response type of work that can happen. We can do real life imaging, and we can see what's happening in these areas and figure out disaster response in real time.
Yeah, there's so much investment and so much research and development happening in this area right now that I know you and your team at TradeSmith just put together a report with 6 different space stocks that are all set to really soar and take off in the future. If you want to scan that QR code right now, or click the link on the description of this video, you can get that full report of all 6 space stocks that he's talking about. Today, Keith, you have 3 names for us in space to share, and I'm really excited about these. This first one we haven't really heard of much on our channel before.
This first one is Karman Holdings. Have you heard of Karman?
I don't think we've really said this name much at all. Maybe once in a MarketBeat Monday, but otherwise I don't know much about this company.
Great. So the ticker symbol is KRMN, and they design, test, and manufacture mission-critical systems for rockets, missiles, hypersonic devices, and spaceships. They are really focused on advanced propulsion, something that we really need to be able to get these systems up into space. They do all sorts of work around space exploration and satellite development. They actually IPO'd earlier this year. I believe it was February or March of this year, and are up 160% since they IPO'd. It's a $10 billion company, and they already have contracts and are doing work for Department of Defense, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, NASA, and plenty more.
This is a really interesting IPO story to be up so much, because sometimes we see IPOs go up and then crash right back down. That's kind of the typical IPO story. Do you think that this company has the ability to really kind of not have that traditional IPO story?
I believe so. I think their timing is right too. So a lot of those companies that have those IPO stories and are crashing are back from 2021, 2022 era where things were way overvalued. They came in with the right value because they were private, they worked on these contracts, then they went public. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this company. Sounds somewhat similar to Rocket Lab. Are they competitors, or is there something different with what they offer?
Yeah, great question. So Karman is actually a lot different than Rocket Lab. So Rocket Lab is putting these rockets in space and they're building the rockets themselves. And what Karman is doing is actually aiding rockets and building mission critical systems for the rockets to get out into space.
Another interesting name in the space sector. Thank you for this one.
You got it.
Let's move on to the second company you have for us today.
This is a really interesting company. It's called BlackSky. BKSY is the ticker symbol. Now, they IPO'd in 2021, and this is the type of story that you're used to for IPOs. They actually IPO'd at $3 billion valuation, and today they are less than a $1 billion valuation. But here's the thing. They're up about 300% in 1 year, and it's because they're finally hitting this sort of real-time ability to be space-based intelligence, and they're AI-driven. So what they do is they do high resolution Earth imaging. And they're doing it in real time. And that's actually really difficult to do widespread and have it be high resolution. They also are doing sort of this non-Earth imaging space. And so they're imaging different meteors that are out in space and looking at different things in space to give feedback to the US government. They have a big contract with the US government. They're also doing a lot with international defense. And they have a lot of sort of security applications. So watching important places in Earth that the US government or international governments are asking them to watch and seeing the type of activity that happens there. It's a little bit scary at times, but it's also important for us to have those safeguards. And they're also doing a lot with the economy and having an economic application. So they're looking at how ships are going across the world, how they're bringing cargo and so forth. So it's a really interesting company, and they're tiny right now. And I think they could absolutely explode like they have this last year.
Okay, this is such an interesting company. I have a lot to unpack here, so many different questions. I think the first one to talk about is what had investors so excited in 2021 when they did IPO? And could we see that excitement come back? Is the reason that excitement pulled back because they didn't have a proof of concept? Was it just the concept that had people excited?
Yeah, so it was mainly they had this concept that got people really excited. They were up really high before they IPO'd. They were IPOing at a time where money was basically free. You saw these valuations that were not down-to-earth valuations. And now we even see that we're a little bit, past those types of valuations that we finally settled upon in 22 and 23. But this company was basically part of the hype. They had a whole proof of concept. They weren't proven out yet. And real-time space-based intelligence, it's difficult to pull off, but they're finally pulling it off. They have great contracts with the government, and so therefore they're now skyrocketing because of that.
Yeah, because it's actually working now. They have the product, they're seeing actual results. So this is very interesting, but it's already had such a big run up. You said up 300% already. Mm-hmm. When you have a company run up this much, how much more room could they have ahead of them still?
A company like this, depending on how their applications spread, I would want to see them spread to more commercial application and go past the government, which is pretty much what they're focused on now. I think if they do that, they could easily go 50 times higher from here. They're less than $1 billion today. So being a $50 billion company is not unheard of. And I think as we have more and more demands around the globe, and consumers like us want to do things that you need Earth imaging in real time for, I think a company like this could absolutely explode higher.
One kind of out of left field question for this. I know you talked about some of it being a little scary. Do you think that there is potential for any regulation slowing down the commercialization of what they have to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to be in a situation where people are literally spying on other people because of this. I would see it more of companies around, let's say, the US are leveraging their data and applying that to their products that us as consumers buy.
Okay, really interesting name. And again, a company that's small now, but has a lot of strong potential. That's what we like about these stocks. They're really interesting. Mm-hmm. Let's get on to the third company you have now.
So this one is ASTS Space Mobile. Now, I think you're familiar with this company. Is that right?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite concepts because I am a big hiker and I love the idea of cell phone service everywhere.
It's wonderful. So this company is actually 5 years old. It's a $28 billion company, so it's not small at all. It's considered a large cap. And it's up about 80% over the last year. It's been down recently, and it has a lot of opportunity to grow. What I really like about this, and you already hinted at this as a hiker, it is a space-based satellite cell 5G type of network that they are creating. Now, here's what's interesting. They only plan on deploying about 240 satellites to give us global coverage around the whole world. Now, Starlink, they have 10,000 satellites to be able to provide internet around the world. So immediately you might say, well, how can ASTS have such a small footprint but want to provide global cell service by 2028 with just 240 satellites? So I did a lot of research on this, and it turns out their satellites are massive. And the amount of coverage they give is massive, which helps as the Earth moves and the satellites move in opposite directions, and they have to beam that sort of uninterrupted service across the globe. So today they have just 5 satellites. So that's probably the equivalent of, let's say, 500 to 1,000 Starlink satellites. We remember when Starlink only worked in certain areas. In 2026, their plan is to have 60 by then and be able to give us large coverage, such as the entire US by 2026 could have uninterrupted 5G cell phone service no matter where they travel in the US. And they want to go global by 2028. This is a cool company. They're doing cool stuff. And I just imagine how the towers will start to disappear over time as the satellites are providing 5G.
And this is one of those concepts that has me excited. I'm not talking about the fundamentals of the company, just the concept. And I think there's so much potential in it to really change the way that we get cell service all over
Absolutely.
the globe. I think one of the naysayers out there, the people who are not so sure about this one being able to take off, is can they execute? It's so expensive to get this off the ground and get this actual capable. Do you think that they have the backing, the capital to actually pull this off?
It's such a great question. And if you asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said no. But today they have customers of AT&T, Verizon, Vodafone, and so forth. I mean, many across the world. And these companies are already testing out these services with AST Space Mobile to figure out how to give us remote service when we're off the grid, like you were talking about with hiking. So I actually think that they finally hit that sort of eureka moment where they're going to just start to accelerate and accelerate. This is going to be a great play over the next 5 years.
Yeah, let's talk about how much more you think it could grow. And I'm glad you mentioned the volatility already, because we've seen this stock hit really well and then come down a little bit. Do you expect to see that volatility continue?
I think with all the companies we talked about today, there's going to be a lot of volatility. It's just the reality of these types of stocks getting hyped up over and over, but it takes them longer to produce what you need them to produce, especially companies with government contracts. Now, I do believe that AT&T, Verizon, and the likes of them are going to want to see ASTS succeed because it is way cheaper to provide space-based cell service once those satellites are there than it is to maintain these towers. And those satellites will give them coverage globally. So it's an incredible story. I do think you're going to see a lot of volatility over the years, but this is definitely a great long-term investment for sure.
I also think the thing to point out what you said, 2026 is not far off.
Not at all.
And to have all of the US covered by then, this is very soon to be able to see, is there proof in the pudding? Is this actually going to
Absolutely.
work? A great company to look at. I know you have 3 other interesting space stocks to look at in this report you have together. So again, I wanted to give you that QR code and the link in the description if you want to go and get 3 other space stocks that are similar stories, maybe a little risky for right now, but also a lot of strong potential growth in the future. Make sure you get that report from Keith and his team at TradeSmith. Keith, before you leave today, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about these really interesting names. You brought us 6 great names in robotics. Now we're talking aerospace. Is this something you like to look at? Are these speculative plays just because they have so much potential? What should investors keep in mind about these kinds of stocks too?
That's a great question. So I love this type of field. I've been in technology my whole life. I just love exploring this and thinking about the possibilities. Like when we talked about Rocket Lab and saying, can you just imagine needing to 3D print an engine in space? How cool is that idea?
Right.
It's something you could never think was possible. We used to have to send things out to space, rescue missions. What if that rescue mission was unmanned? How neat is that? Or figuring out that where a meteor is coming from and being able to capture it in some sort of way and help people be safer. Thinking about disaster zones and giving people cell phone service in a disaster zone and responding quicker. I just think this is a really, really cool field. And I love doing research in robotics, space, and anything that's technology or AI related. I do think that all of these types of trends are very volatile. It is the type of thing where you don't want to put a lot of money in it that you could lose because we are emotional people, and typically when stocks go down we panic and we sell, and it's always at the wrong times. So you want to start thinking about these types of stocks in terms of, do I just put $100 towards each stock? Watch what happens, wait a little bit, put more. But it's when people think that they're going to have this sort of, they have this fear of missing out, that they start going all in. They put $10,000, $20,000, and then they get mad when those stocks cut in half. Sometimes they'll cut in half, and then they'll go up 1,000% over time. So you do have to be really careful when you're investing in these types of companies, no matter where they're coming from.
So interesting. One last question is, we get excited about the ideas, right? We get excited about the potential. Can you get burned as an investor by investing solely in an idea? Does there have to be some other pieces that you look at more than just the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most important thing to do is you want to look at management teams, you want to look at the products that they're creating, and you want to know who they have contracts with, who their customers are, and is that going to go bigger? So we talked about Ambarella last time we were together, and one of their biggest customers is GoPro. And they also have a couple drone customers. I mean, these are things that are growing. So you want to look for stocks that have real life application. They're actually doing it. They have great customers, good management teams, and great products that you can see scaling. If you're investing in an idea solely and it's not quite proven yet, that's when you get burned the most.
Such good advice, and some other really interesting stocks. Keith, thank you so much for coming on again to the show.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Let me know what you think in the comments of these 3 space stocks. Are there other names in space that you're looking at? Do you have any thoughts on the ideas these 3 companies bring to the table? I always love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and as always, happy investing.